This was an extensive conversion. As I said, it started off as a 3C, so the cockpit finished back about here where the blade is, short nose, the old eyelid burner can, which I'm going to use for the demo, which is out of this kit probably. And I'll show you a couple other things. The wing tanks were in about 3 pieces as well. So it's got a lot of super glue in there, as well as just for doing the seams, but also the side seams, the nose caps. So basically,
pass it around before you go and fill it, please, so I can see.
yep, so normal thin super glue is what I use. I use the kicker, again, to deal with the impatience.
Yep.
You can use anything to hold your super glue. Now for me, these are the little cases that my contacts come in. So every fortnight at least I'm getting a fresh pair. I've seen people at Bandcamp and that use beer bottle caps.
Yep.
Because you can stack a lot of them, small space,
Plastic
use
caps that
them,
come off plastic
throw
bottles.
them away.
Yeah.
Your favourite scriber, sander, that's the demo part I'm going to use for the seam on that. Obviously a little applicator for the kicker.
Modelers really reuse a lot of things, don't they? So we're really good for the environment. We should put a campaign out there on that.
Now these are my custom made super glue applicators. What this is a needle, basically sharp end into the brush and then grind the head off. So it becomes like a tiny little fork, and obviously I've got a much larger one if I'm doing big fills.
Sewing needle, you mean, so you cut the
You
half the eye
where
off.
you thread the thread
You
through.
cut the eye off, or you
Yep, cut the eye off.
half the eye, so
Yep.
you got a fork on the end.
Yep, yeah, that's it. You've just got a fork.
Where's he going to fill, do you reckon?
Cigarette lighter, I'll show you what that's for at the end, but that's a essential tool, and obviously whatever your favourite sanding tools are. So
What are you going to actually fill on this?
those
hole at
two
the end.
lights.
The hole at the end? Oh, fantastic. We just thought it might have been a little V shape here.
Well, there's probably more there, but so just put a little bit of super glue in there.
I'll make
So-
a mark for you.
No.
It's going to go inside a fuselage.
This is just in my scrap bin.
Oh, right.
So generally what I do is have a look, you sand it, you see your little trace of a seam line, you think, okay, I've got an edge through there. With super glue, if you put it on the top, it's like that magic putty. As you sand, it gets thinner and thinner, and then you've virtually got nothing left. So what you want to do is give it something to bite into. So, normally I might use a ruler on this, but it'll follow the natural seam.
So where do you get your turret hand from then?
The what?
Your turret hand?
Third hand.
Third hand.
No,
If you,
thanks.
normally you would use a ruler on that, and I'm thinking, well,
Yeah.
you've got one with the scriber, one with the ruler, one holding it.
What I've got is
Where
bits
does
of
the
metal,
turret hand come from?
and I use sticky tape on one side of this little bit of metal.
Right.
So you line it up, hold the tape, hold it like that,
Yeah.
and then you scrape.
Okay.
So basically all I'm doing with this is just applying this in there.
Oh, sorry. Q&A's not open yet.
And the beauty of this, with a small one, you can do very fine filling. And what I can also use this is gluing little bits together, where you can just get right in there and just put this exactly where you need it to be. Now,
Have you ever put the baking powder in it?
if it's really big, yes.
Okay.
So for the sake of speeding up the demo here, so
Yeah.
this is the large one.
I've never done it. I've read about it and heard about it.
Because it doesn't react with the super.
Now,
No.
the advantage I find over solvent-based. Now, the thing is here, when you're doing your kicker, you put it to the side of the super glue and let it run over it, because if you go to put it on, you
stick
could
to
find you stick to it, or you'll start to rip it out and stuff like that.
Is there any fume emissions when those two things?
You might get a little bit coming off the super glue. Super glue can give some fumes when it cooks off.
The kicker usually stinks like high heaven.
Yeah.
You can get the little misters, so you
Right.
just spray it.
So I've filled that.
They use a lot of
Now-
Look at that dried already.
I've wiped that off because it's an oil base.
Yep.
Now, while Marty's waiting for his,
You're standing already.
correct,
Oh, let him go.
so
Yeah.
this deals with my impatience.
We'll need to revisit Marty next week or something, I reckon. Like,
So, and this is why I like super glue is because one, I can do it straight away, and if I hold that up to the light, I can see if I end up with little divots, it's because as the super glue dries with the accelerator, it shrinks. So it's doing all of its pre-shrinking before you're sanding. But if there's little divots or whatever, or regularities, you'll actually see them on the edge of if you haven't sanded the super glue enough, or if in the middle is all divots, what you see is shiny spots. Because where you've sanded is flat, so if you hold it up and you get it to the right light, you'll say, look, I've got a couple of spots there. And all you do is just reapply. And you just reapply it.
Kick it.
Hit it with the accelerator.
This shit about this hobby.
Filling
seams.
Well, this is what you want.
And
You tried deckling?
I don't mind Declan.
straight away I'm sanding again.
You got an F4 in your collection?
Now, the only disadvantage with super glue is if you're doing this, you want to be sanding it off within 24 hours.
Okay.
Right. Okay.
After about 48 hours, that super glue will go rock hard. You'll be sanding away, and
plastic
everything
glue.
on the side of super glue will be getting sanded off, and it's still looking at you and laughing.
It'd be harder than the
serious
plastic.
metal file.
Correct. So, and if you're doing something, dinner's ready, I haven't quite finished, well, you just leave it where it is, and you come back after dinner and you're whack, or 2 days later you come through and you continue. But the beauty of it, it's instantaneous from applying, kicking, I can start sanding straight away. Now, I've only bought one sanding stick, but you can sand this down to a smooth glass finish, which is, I'll show you some points that are made, not out of plastic, but super glue on the model. And if you find, okay, this is all good, within 24 hours, the body of super glue is very much like the polystyrene around it. So if you need to rescribe a panel line through it, it'll follow the same sort of, you can feel it, you can hear the scriber, it's sort of cutting through the same as it's plastic. So it's consistent, so you get a nice edge panel line. I also find it really good using the same thing, rescribing a model, and sometimes your scribe will kick off. And I use a weathering solution like the Tamiya Black, and you've seen me running through the panel line, and you can see where your panel line stops short or where it's skewed off. You just put this in, you fill in where it's skewed off, hit it with a kicker, sand it through, and that panel line's disappeared. And the consistency is the same, that if it gets into the panel line you want to keep, your scribe will just run through there without any problem. But now, these will build up with super glue, like you can see there's a little bit there. This is what the light is for.
I breathe it in.
Yeah, avoid the,
That's how I clean my Rebel contactor tubes as well.
Yeah.
Oh, does that work, does it?
Yeah.
So you just get that metal bloody thing and just heat it up on there.
now normally I would
Don't breathe it in though.
dip that in my bottle of water where I'm keeping my brushes through. But you'll find that they will clog up. That one's clogged up a little bit.
Retempering the needle.
Yeah, and you're retempering the needle. You're quite correct. And they're ready to start being used again. And that's pretty much it. You can use it for filling seams. So this has had its seams through there all filled. The seams through the back here where this nose cap has been filled. The side of the air intakes is a separate piece, has been filled using super glue, the nose cap, and obviously the back here. Plus they get rescribed. So it's got that same, the best thing is it's got that same consistency as plastic. Where I've experienced with some fillers, as you're trying to rescribe over panel line, it will take a small chunk out.
That's within a 24-hour period or 24 to 48 for rescribing?
You'd want to do that within that 24 to 48 as well.
Okay.
Now, the other thing that super glue has its use for is you'll see these nav lights in the top of the wing.
Yep.
Did not use the plastic parts at all, just painted the colours underneath, just filled it with super glue, and then sanded it all down, and then got down to finer and finer sandpaper and polished it to a lens. Same with these inserts. If, normally when you're putting in nav lights, they don't quite fit in properly. All I do is super glue them in, build up the super glue around the edges, around the front, hit it with a kicker, and then just sand it all, and super glue will sand and become and look transparent.
Once you polish it up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you use it to fill the seams around clear parts as well? I've seen
Yep.
guys on the internet
Yep.
do that. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Because it doesn't fog the
Yeah.
plastic.
I found if you dip you can fog your plastic with super glue depending on what brand, but I found that if you dip your canopies in Future or something like that, then it doesn't fog.
Okay.
So, but you can see through here, this was an extensive conversion. You can see how it's all filled in nicely there, sand smooth. It's allowed me to rescribe it consistently. The drop tanks were actually 3 parts. And again, they've been all filled and rescribed.
Wow.
So they weren't a top and a bottom then, they were 3 parts.
3 tubes.
Okay.
Yeah. Nose cap,
So
centrepiece,
therefore
and
you're
back.
actually putting the joint on where there would normally be
Yep.
a panel line or something.
Yes.
Oh, I thought you were going to impress me that you were going to say, yeah, you can't even see where the 2 halves come together.
Well, you won't, because when you glue the parts together, while it may be on the seam line,
Yeah.
to get rid of the step, you're filling a whole lot. It's consistently smooth,
Sure.
and then you've got to rescribe the line. But it keeps giving you the same consistency of, these were resin parts, so resin to
Yep.
plastic.
Yep.
But you've got that similar sort of consistency as you're sanding down.
Okay.
And as I said, you can polish it to like a glass finish. I prefer using super glue because once you've hit it with the kicker, you're pre-shrinking it before you even sand it. And it's instantaneous. I'm not waiting a couple of hours for it to dry because I am an impatient modeler.
So where's the kicker from? Is B&A or?
Yeah, you can get that from B&A or any hobby shop or anything like that.
Some you can buy in a little spray.
Spray,
too.
yeah.
Yeah, I've got one with the vape, I think, which I've never used.
Yeah, I find the little spray thing's a bit messy because it really
Goes everywhere.
goes everywhere.
Yeah, you get it all over your hand, all over your
Use it
model.
20 times
Yeah.
more than you need.
Then all of a sudden you've got an ollie model.
Yeah. So as you can see, well, that's where that is. Actually, I'll sand and get rid of the extra couple of lines I scribed in there.
See the difference between a first place getter and a entrant.
Well, you'd be surprised that, and look, I'll leave the dust in there because you'll see the extra lines I've scribed through, but you can pass that around.
He's an impatient modeler, I'm a lazy modeler.
Look, when it comes to comp, having judged a lot in comps, where people are losing their points is still in construction. That's where they're losing the bulk of their points. And a lot of it, seams. Ghost seams are the real thing. When you're looking at a model and you think, yeah, that looks fine, and you sort of just rotate around, you can just see the ghost seam up the edge.
Yeah, and that's impatience.
Yeah,
That's
it is.
impatience. Because I
I
get
get
them all
that.
the time.
Yeah. And I've found that everything I've used, like a filler, I haven't tried Marty's technique yet, but I've found with all the fillers I've used, there is shrinkage.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't see it. You've looked at it, you've wiped the model down and everything, and then you hit it with the first coat of paint and you see the ghost seam and nothing. And for me, once I'm starting to paint, I don't want to be going back to
That's the
construction.
thing. With
So,
Martin's one,
The super glue technique works well for me,
paints down, that's it.
but it's because it's
Yeah,
more primarily
I'm like
because
that.
it's instantaneous, it doesn't shrink, and it's rock solid.
So I've done the super glue, but I've never done the kicker. So I just sort of.
Yeah, the kicker just
let it
helps
go.
speed it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I mean, the Builder Bitch, was it ICM Yak I did years ago? The seam, July seam was horrible, and it was just super glue, metal file.
Yep.
And that's where Builder Bitch can be really good fun from the point of view you can try something
Yeah.
that if it doesn't work, or
Yeah.
no biggie.
What was that word you used? Build a bitch can be really good fun.
I must remember to have fun, and finish the last two I didn't get.
It will be this time round because it's 48 scale, mate, so you've got no excuse.
No excuse.
So as I said, that's
No
just
excuse
been,
here,
you know,
okay.
sanded down with just a,
Well,
Lots
they're all
of fun then,
F16s,
isn't it?
they've got no excuse.
Yeah.
that's just a normal sanding stick. Obviously, you'll get a better finish out of it once you use a finer one, but you can run your fingernail over it and it's not going to get caught in there where you scribe the line. But scribing allows that V for the super glue to actually sit in there,
Yeah.
and you're basically taking the head off. Whereas if you've got that ghost seam and you put super glue in there, you tend to take
You end up
most
with
of
a
it
hump.
out.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you're doing the bigger gaps, it'll come through and it'll be so clear, you'll think, actually, is there anything in there? It looks like there's
That's
nothing in
clear.
there,
Yeah.
but you know, just a bit of water over it,
Yeah.
or even a bit of the kicker because it's got an oil finish.
Yeah.
You put it on, you can hold it up to the light and see that it's gone, or it's still got a little divot, and yeah. And the best thing is you can, if you're doing a large fill into a contour, I've used super glue, just build it up, hit it with a
Yeah.
kicker, keep building it up, hit it with a kicker, and just build it up in thin layers, sort of like you were talking about the surfacer.
So, but it's quicker, yeah.
Yeah, but I can have that filled in no time at all, and then I'm ready to start sanding.
Yeah, that, I mean, the surface is not bad in doing that. It does dry fairly quick and to the point where you can sand it, but that is even quicker.
Yeah.
So, and I'd say you probably use less iterations over the top if you're building it up
Yep,
with the super glue.
yep. And even the applicator, I mean, you can see that's not the first time that's been used. When that super glue cooks off, or I'll put a couple of drops of that in there,
Yeah.
and then you just hook it in and fish out the solid pieces, and away you go again.
Beautiful.
So,
Very,
Excellent.
So
very
all
That's it.
techniques
That's really
have
good.
their pluses and
Minuses.
minuses. So the thing that you have to remember with super glue is that it doesn't last. It
I
does break-
disagree with that.
It breaks.
No, I disagree with that.
It breaks down over time.
No, disagree. I've got models that have got super glue in
Yes.
there from 20 years ago, and they're still rock solid.
Mm.
Still rock solid.
So, and I've had the
guys
opposite.
at some stage it's going, boom.
Yeah, I was waiting for that to happen myself.
Well,
Maybe it's
Dad,
a brain thing.
Dad is, I think I saw the other day, it was 10 or 12 years old.
Mm.
And there's no sign of any deterioration anywhere at all.
That Mirage is 10 or 12 years old.
Yeah.
Really? Wow. You keep your kids nice and clean.
Keeps it on the lock and key, mate,
Yeah.
in a box, hiding.
Because one of my questions was going to be, which wasn't related to the filling, was why didn't you build the kinetic kit? But now I know why.
Yeah, the kinetic kit
Wasn't
didn't
around.
exist, yeah. I think when I built that, the Hobby Boss Mirage 3C
Yes.
was
Yeah.
still fairly new.
Yes. That would have
So-
been around 10, 12 years ago.
Yeah,
What brand is that?
Is that the
That's Hobby Boss.
Yeah.
Hobby Horse.
yeah,
Converted.
yeah, but it's conversion.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, so sorry, I disagree completely because I've got models held together
From a
by super
structural
glue.
build, super glue has its problems, and I know that from the
Well, I've
right
got-
staff toning.
I've got resin kits that are 20, well, they'll be more than 23 years old because I built them when we were in the old house. And resin kits, obviously I use super glue for the whole construction. They're still there in one piece.
Yeah.
No problem whatsoever.
environmental factors that
Maybe you're buying
that
cheap
that
shit super
influence
glue.
it as well.
Could be Martin's running around the
Could it
room
be
as well.
brain?
Like if
If
you
the brains just don't
you put your models
Sorry?
in a
Could
case
it be
that
the
is
type of
largely
brain
sealed,
where
Look, it may well be.
air's not getting to
It
them,
may
it's
well
a
be.
much better environment.
But it's just one of those things that after having a few kits, and I know also, Les, from guitar work, super glue is an express way because of the way that it polishes up to fix finish
Structures
issues.
and that, yeah.
But then literally a couple of years later, and I mean you're handling it, so you've got oils and that, I've seen them decay.
Oh, there you go.
It could be what Peter said, two different types of super glue, because super
Yeah.
glue, the gap filling was initially discovered as a medical
Yeah.
procedure treatment for
Get wounds
That's
together
why we
quickly.
invented-
closing wounds
Yeah.
up quickly, yeah.
I would say
Yeah.
this guy's super glue is my preferred, Bob
Yeah,
Smith's,
I use that one.
but I avoid the,
Zapper Gap?
yeah,
With the $2 shop super glue, you avoid those ones?
the $2 ones, you know, little stuff, that's super glue, that's freaking horrible. Don't use, my view is don't use cheap shit super glue. That might give you problems, but if you buy good super glue, and I have, in my hobby room, I've got one of those little micro fridges. So my super glue is always kept in the fridge.
I was going to ask about that, because I've been told too that if you want super glue to last longer, leave the top off it.
What?
Yeah, leave the top off it.
Right.
Maybe that's the cheaper, maybe that's for the cheaper ones.
Could be.
I've
I always
done
make
it
sure
with the
the
cheap
cap's
ones.
clean.
The reason
Cap
No,
on.
it's dry
goes
on
so
there.
solid,
In the
you
fridge.
can't
So
get
I
out of the
don't know
hole,
how
so
that
it's always
would
in
work.
there.
I've found
Done it
that
with
once
the
I
$2
started
super glue.
using it,
And it worked.
I'd probably end up
Must be
in,
nice.
before I was putting them in the fridge, once I started using them, probably halfway through it at the most, it'd
Yep.
start getting really thick.
Jelly, yeah,
Yeah,
like the
and-
Zapper Gap does. You buy
And
it,
it would not kick off.
big bottle like that,
Like
and then you
it's-
buy it, and then
yeah.
just throw it all
Well, that was
out.
like a few years
But I
back.
put it
was
now in the
doing-
fridge.
I
Yeah,
was
a little
doing the
micro
Winnuts
fridge, I
kit,
think cost me like
and I was
$100,
rigging.
$130.
And like, because I used to, so don't get me wrong, I'm not anti super glue,
eBay.
not at all.
Okay.
I'm just very careful with my use of it. and I was rigging a plane, and I was just having a nightmare job. And then it clicked. For the first time, I'd experienced super glue going off.
Yeah.
Because I went and got a new tube,
And I worked fine.
and
Yeah.
Yeah.
bang, no problem.
Okay.
And you can't even thin the shit when it starts.
No,
sticking
no,
out.
no.
Kills me.
Yeah.
The only reason I bought a little fridge tip in the hobby room is because if I used it, I was too lazy to take it down and put it in the spare
Yeah.
garage fridge
That's
and then pick it up when I was modelling.
That's
So I just bought this little thing. Look, the first one lasted me
I had one of
about
those that
2
had beer
years.
in it.